We are two brown chicks changing the face of therapy on both sides of the couch.
Welcome back. Today we're going to be chatting about couples therapy. Both of us are couples therapists, and so we're going to discuss, what to expect when you're seeking marriage or relationship therapy, what not to expect, what most people expect, and just understanding maybe when to kind of seek out some help.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to be talking a lot about what not to expect.
Yes. Yes. What percentage? I was at a marriage and family training, and they were like, "What percentage of your practice is couples?" And I was like, "Oh, I never thought about that." What would you say percentage?
Maybe about 30% or
Okay.
so. Maybe like that. Because it's not 50% for sure. So I don't know, maybe about 30%.
Okay, mine is probably more. I probably have, which is interesting because like you're married, I'm single. I have probably around 70% is couples.
Yeah.
But I think that's because just how we advertise ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, I do a lot of individual work with women.
So we both work with couples, though. We both work, even if not with couples, with individuals that are wanting to work on relationships, sexual issues, things like that.
Right.
And so we've had a lot of experience with this, and especially with people's expectations.
Expectations is a big one. So yeah, let's just kind of
That's what I'm saying. I'm curious, like, what is the most common, like when someone is starting, not why they're coming, but what do they think marriage counseling or relationship therapy, what is that going to do for their relationship? Or what does that even mean? What do people usually expect when coming?
It's difficult to say because, but from this end of the couch, it feels like sometimes people may have the misconception that it's going to be a quick fix. But even before that you're going to be a referee.
Oh, yeah. They always say, like, we just need a mediator.
Right. Yeah. Like, we need somebody, like, to break the tie as to who's right.
Yep. I feel like that happens a lot. We both do consultations, and a lot of times on the phone, it's like, we just need to have a third person to, like, listen to our fights.
Right.
And tell us who's right.
Who are you with?
Which side
Whose side are you on?
And that is not what couples therapy is at all.
Right. We're on the side of the relationship.
Right. Exactly.
And whatever goals are that you have set for your relationship. I always tell couples, I tell my clients, I'm the keeper of your goals. So tell me what your goals are. And then as we go through this process, I'm going to tell you, like, is that going to get you closer to your goal or is it going to get you further from your goal? And I think sometimes we lose sight of what we say our goals are for therapy.
Right. Or as you go through the process, it's like, oh, no, let's change that goal.
Which is okay.
I don't want to work toward that goal.
Yeah.
Right. It happens. It definitely happens. But I think what you said about the quick, I think is common.
Yeah.
With my consultation, I typically tell people like what to expect in the first like 4 sessions. And they'll be like, okay, so how many sessions do you think it's going to take? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right. It really depends on the client.
It depends on
how motivated you are for change, where you are in your change process. If you're really going to do the work outside
that's a big
of the therapy room.
Right.
So much of it depends on the client and what you're willing to do for this change. And change isn't easy.
Right. And especially even what comes up during those first sessions, right? Because you can come in and say communication is an issue. And then I learned that there was infidelity. You have a history of abuse in your household, trauma, all kind of things like that. So that also impacts the progress that you can make within the therapy session. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely how quickly can we fix this?
Yes. or sometimes I think the expectation is I'm going to bring my partner so you can fix them.
Right? Yes.
Because I'm not the issue.
Right.
Which, like, I'm not the issue.
It's not me. These are the 10 things that they've been doing. And if we could just get these 10 things resolved, the relationship would be perfect.
Yeah. If you would just stop doing those things, or if you would just
start doing those things. Yeah.
If they would do those things, then we would be golden.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely. And that is not, again, what happens.
Right.
I'm trying to think of any other expectations. I think, referee, that it's going to be quick. That this hour and a half that we have here is what's going to fix us.
Right.
And that's all.
I'm coming to therapy once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month. And It's not working.
Right. Therapy isn't working. We come every week and it's not working. And so kind of the expectation that within that hour and a half, we're going to get all the skills, all the tools, all the practice that we need. And we don't need to do anything really outside of the sessions. And it should be working, it should be working.
It should be working. Why? And I would say that sometimes you don't, when it's working, it may not look the way that you anticipated.
Yep.
It may be that so here's what you can expect coming to therapy. Couples therapy specifically. Yes. You may start to pull the thread, and this may be the first time that you are really addressing issues head on that maybe you've been avoiding individually or as a couple. So things may start to actually get a little bit rockier.
Yep.
Right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. What I mean by rockier is, you may start to get really uncomfortable. You may start having really uncomfortable conversations. You may start feeling your emotions for the first time that maybe you've been suppressing. So sometimes, this will be the first time that you're actually going there and really allowing yourself, or that you're really being challenged to face this stuff head on.
Right. And to your point of it not looking the way you would like for it to look, sometimes we think if these three things change, everything will be better. Right. And then as those things start to evolve and maybe change, and maybe even change in a way that you thought you wanted, you recognize that that's not what you needed to feel fulfilled in a relationship. Right. And so that's a hard thing to kind of go to face as well.
Right. So what you can expect is that it's going to be challenging and it's going to be uncomfortable, and that you may start having really difficult conversations or feeling really heavy emotions that maybe you had been avoiding before. Not that they weren't there, it's just you weren't dealing with it.
Right. I think along with that, the expectation, just a concrete expectation, is that there is going to be work to be done outside of the session.
Right.
There is going to be some type of homework, some type of practice, and even I hear a lot like, well, the sessions are good, but then outside of that, it feels like we're not applying. And so sometimes that's why you will get specific homework that's like, hey, do this week. I'm not expecting you to be able to apply all these things we've talked about, because a lot of times within a session, you do get a lot of information and there are a lot of discoveries, and it doesn't mean that there's going to be a change immediately. But if you're trying to make some effort, even if it doesn't go the way that it did in session, even if it doesn't look as perfect as it may have looked in session, to kind of give yourself that grace of like, this is us learning and this is us growing. And so that means that yes, in session we do the work, but also outside of session you do the work. And just because it doesn't look the same doesn't mean it's not working.
Right. Does not mean that it's not working. And again, another thing that I think you can expect when you're coming to therapy is that you may find that you have different goals, like different objectives of maybe what you want to get out of therapy may be different than what your partner wants to get out of therapy. That's really common. I think particularly when couples come in and it's kind of like they're here because there's been a huge crisis, or they're at the end of the rope in the relationship, and you may have one partner who comes in and is like, I'm just here to even see if I want to be in the relationship, and the other person may be like, no, we're here to save the relationship.
Right.
And so that's going to have an impact on what the process looks like also.
Definitely. And people view marriage counseling very different. And so it could be, this is my checkbox, right? This is just a check before we file for divorce. Like, I just want to say that we tried. Some people are like, no, this is like, divorce isn't even an option. We're working on the relationship. And so I think that's important to identify as well in the beginning, is like, how do you view this? How do you view coming here and doing this work? And is it I'm here, or is it I'm going to put in work in session and outside of session?
Right.
And that can kind of help you kind of understand what that person's thought process is. But sometimes it is just like, there could be a block there. Could be a lot of reasons why you're not seeing the progress outside of the session. But I think, like you said, just kind of identifying like, what are your goals, and really listening and taking what that person says as their truth, and not necessarily like, well, they're saying that, but I know that this is what they actually mean. And that's one of those skills that you learn in couples therapy, is how do you start to accept that someone else's truth can be completely different than your own.
Right. Right. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like as long as you don't, and sometimes I think people struggle with when they're asked, what are your goals for therapy? Mm-hmm. So sometimes what I will ask them is, what's the vision of your relationship or the version of your relationship that you're working towards? Mm-hmm. Like, what would your relationship be like? What would, how would you be treating one another?
Right.
How often would you be spending time together? How often would you be having sex, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Right.
To really see what it is that you're going to be using as a measure as you go through this process.
Exactly. And is that aligned with your partner?
Again.
And if not, how do we get y'all to a place where both of you feel comfortable without feeling like both of you are losing, right?
Right.
I think a lot of times people, it's always that win-lose thing.
Right.
Which just kind of goes back to what you said earlier about our role not being we're not referees. We're not necessarily even mediators. We're more of, this is the relationship, this is our client, how do we help the relationship? Mm-hmm. And so does that mean that means I'm not on anyone's side? That means the relationship is the main thing. So whether you're right or wrong in an argument, does that help the relationship?
Right.
Like, you can be 100% right based on my experiences and your experiences, but if it's not benefiting the relationship, what does that matter?
Right.
And I think we have a hard time like that sometimes because we're so focused on like, who's right?
Because I'm right.
And who started it?
Because I'm right.
Those two things are the most important things in any disagreement.
It's important for you to acknowledge I'm right.
Right. You have to say that I'm right. Or at least understand, like, I might have been wrong in what I did, but it was only because I was into what you did. So in reality, it's your fault.
Yes. So, it is their fault.
I think people are surprised how much relationship therapy is about individual growth and responsibility and your own work.
Yeah. I always kind of get that like look when I'm like, okay, we know the importance of interdependence, mm-hmm. but we don't always acknowledge or see the importance of being a good partner, also having our autonomy, mm-hmm. and being able to really identify who you are independent of the relationship. Right. That doesn't mean that you then, we're trying to drive you apart, right. or what have you. But it's kind of like the whole idea that you being a complete whole person
right.
can enhance the relationship.
Yeah. And I tell my couple sometimes it feels like we do this, like we separate you guys and kind of work on the individual before we kind of come together in a healthier place. Especially if you're enmeshed. It's not enmeshed. Especially if you're enmeshed or anything, or not enmeshed. I mean, that's the word, but like if you're codependent or completely just everything has to be together, then sometimes it feels like we're pulling you apart and focusing on your independence, on your autonomy, on who are you as a person and who do you want to be just as an adult human. And then how does that then reflect in your relationship? Right. Because I hear a lot of people say that I've lost myself in my relationship, mm-hmm. or I don't feel like I can be me, or they don't accept who I am. And sometimes it's that, do you accept who you are? And do you have a strong enough hold on who you are as an individual that you can stand in this relationship and say, this is me and there's nothing wrong with me. And I feel confident in how I interact with you. I feel confident in who I am in relation to you and in relation to myself.
And I think it's also important because when we are codependent, then you kind of are waiting on the other person to meet your needs, yep. to rescue you, to rescue you from your emotions, to read your mind. We outsource so much of our power or we'll outsource our responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And so what that might look like is, I may be avoiding conversations, mm-hmm. because I don't want to make you mad, mm-hmm. or, I'm waiting for you to come and read my mind or ask me, why am I upset?
Right.
So that's part of why we focus on the individual.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I probably more recently when working with couples, I push toward, before you make a decision about your relationship, do you feel like you are the best version of yourself? Mm. Do you feel like you have done your growth and your work to be able to say, like, you know what? I put the effort into the relationship. I put the effort into myself. I've become this person that I'm proud of and that I love and that I feel comfortable with, regardless of who's around me, whether I'm in this relationship or not. And then I feel more confident in making that decision of like staying or leaving, as opposed to making those decisions when everything is in array. You feel like you're not yourself. You feel like I'm just this angry person. It's like, well, work on that. Yeah. Spend time working on that. How do I not let my external circumstances determine who I am? Mm-hmm. And then when you feel that confident, and if it still feels like this just isn't right, then that's okay to make that decision because Absolutely. You feel more confident in the fact that like it's not that I didn't do what I needed to do.
Right.
And that I wasn't who I was when I made that decision.
Yep.
So that's another, again, reason why working on yourself is so important, because once you kind of get to that place of, I know who I am and I'm confident that I'm the best version of myself in this relationship and it's still not working, then it can make sense that maybe you want to walk away.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that you can expect when you come to couples therapy is that you may feel really awkward with some of the exercises.
Yeah. Yeah. They can feel dumb.
Yes, they'll feel real, and that's okay. Part of why it feels awkward is because, for example, if you're doing a communication exercise, okay, yes, you're probably not going to talk like this outside of the therapy.
I always forget to give that disclaimer in the beginning, which I kind of like that I don't, but they're always like looking at me like, what you want me? Like, why are we talking like this?
Right. But, part of it is to get you to learn the skills to have different intention when you're communicating. So, yes, it's not going to feel natural. It's going to feel unnatural because what you're used to doing is probably what's brought you to therapy.
Exactly.
And the other piece is that once you get more into the habit of this, you'll see that, healthy communication, couples with healthy communication, they just kind of naturally do this. So it's going to get you into the habit of being just as enthusiastic about listening to your partner and, wanting their goals or their needs to get met as you are of yours. Right. So you can expect that it's going to feel a little awkward and you might roll your eyes and like, what is this? And it's part of the process. Right.
Definitely it's not anything that will come naturally. And it's not expected that you're going to be able to talk to each other this way or whatever the exercises are. When we are touching, checking in with each other, and it's not expected all the time, every time. But it's one of those things where the first thing is once you become aware of the patterns that you have, then it makes it a lot easier to kind of disrupt those patterns. And so when we start practicing these skills, when we start having you do these exercises, and then once you kind of get into your everyday life and start to be like, oh, that's a time when I probably should have repeated back what they said because I just went on whatever I was thinking, and so then it helps because now at this point you can start kind of incorporating, well, when you identify it, then you can say like, okay, so next time this is what I can do because I know that this is a skill I'm supposed to be using, but it takes time to kind of start incorporating, and that's why it feels so weird when you're doing it in session, but it's helpful because the more that you practice it and the more it becomes like a natural thing just to say, then outside of it when you say it, it doesn't feel like strange, especially if you're saying it in the heat of a disagreement or something like that. I think that's the hardest thing is and this is just, I'm thinking about like in life, right? Like if I'm reading a book about, I don't know, problem solving or handling my stress or whatever. And they give me all these skills that I'm supposed to use when I'm stressed out. And I wait until the moment I'm stressed out to do it.
My brain's not going to.
I'm going to do what I always do because that's what my brain does. Like I handle the situations in the way that's the most comfortable. But if you're practicing these things before the stress comes, when you're practicing like, okay, I'm going to start, counting back from 10. I'm going to start doing the senses or whatever when I'm feeling some anxiety. When you start doing those exercises outside of that, then when you get into those moments, it doesn't feel so foreign. Right. When you try to add those skills. Yeah. So what do you think as far as like, and I know you kind of touched on this before, but as a therapist, what is your goal when it comes to working with couples?
To help them get closer to their goal. Like, I want to help you heal, really honestly, like, I want to help you heal your relationship, and what that looks like at the end of the process, I don't know. Right. I think that's another misconception is that people think that coming to couples therapy is solely for the purpose of staying together. Right. And so they may avoid that. But no, let's say you've decided you don't want to be together, but you want to walk away from it peacefully, or you have children together, and so you're going to be in each other's lives forever, and there's still some unfinished work to do. Right. Absolutely, couples therapy can work for that too. But my goal really is to help you heal your relationship, for it to be a mutually satisfying relationship. Mutually satisfying being the key. Right. But what that looks like is up to my clients.
100%. I think, and that's a big part is, a lot of times I feel like we get caught up in the shoulds. Right. And what should a relationship look like? Or this is what my parents' relationship look like. And a lot of times for me, my goal is similar to yours. It's like, what are your goals? But also, how do we create a relationship that's about you guys and nobody else? That's right. How do we determine what works for for whoever's in the relationship, and make sure that this is our relationship and what we want in this relationship, and not what we think we're supposed to have in a
or other
relationship.
people are telling us
This is what a relationship is supposed to look like. So a lot of the work I do is about like, where did these beliefs come from?
Right.
Why do you think that relationships have to look like this?
Right.
And does that even fit for who you are in 2019, 2020, as opposed to your parents in 2000 and 1980? You know, like it could be, they're going to look completely different.
Right.
And so kind of that acceptance of, if it doesn't look like theirs, as long as it's working for us, then
that's right.
That's all that matters.
Absolutely. Yeah. Figuring out what it is that works for you, and it's okay that you get to define what that looks like.
Right. Right. And it's nobody else's business, and you don't even have to talk about anybody else if you don't want to. Like, it's not for them to know. It's for y'all to know that this works. And so we have to kind of let go of whatever other beliefs or anybody else's opinions about what it should look like.
Yep.
But definitely, like you said, the relationship is the client. It's not the individuals. We both, if we have clients that need some individual work, we refer them out, because it can be difficult to try to juggle individual therapy and relationship therapy, because we're human and we can become biased. And so to try to have that mix in there can be a little hard. So if somebody is looking for like, hey, I need to work on these things, or if I identify something that they need to work on, hey, this might be something that you need to go seek outside while I'm helping the relationship. Seek someone to help you individually to kind of get you past whatever's
right. That just helps to really preserve the process. Also.
Exactly. Exactly. Are there any, like, I guess, with activities that like are pretty much staples with your couples that, like, if they were to come and see you, they can kind of expect, or I guess I'm thinking there's so many different theories and ways that people work. So I guess there's not anything that like every couples therapist is going to do.
No, because I lean a lot towards EFT, to emotionally focused therapy, where there's not actually a lot of homework necessarily. It's more about focusing on the process and helping the clients to have a different process. But I like to give resources between sessions. But if you go to an EFT therapist, they may not give you a whole lot of homework per se. But a lot of it is really helping clients to develop different skills as far as how they communicate, and to really be able to identify their emotions differently, and to see how it is that they trigger one another, you know, and what's happening in your brain, like when you're having these arguments. And I do a lot of family of origin stuff, like, where did these ideas come from? Where did you learn about relationships? How did you learn to cope? So I tend to lean a lot in that area.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm pretty similar as far as it's the goal, and this kind of goes back, of course, about the beliefs and things like that, but for the couple to be able to identify the process that they find themselves in, or the dance, if you
their
know,
own
whatever, their cycle. And so for them to be able to identify that, and then to be able to kind of say like, oh, look at us going back into this again. Right. And like, okay, what do I need to do differently to change the cycle? Not waiting on the other person to do something differently, but like them, giving them the power to say like, I also can control how this goes, even if we are way down a rabbit hole. Once I identify it, I'm able to kind of make those decisions to get us out of this.
It just takes one person to be able to kind of break the cycle, get off the merry-go-round.
It's like any other systems, or if you think about a car or whatever, it's all connected, and if one thing stops working, then everything else kind of falls into place. If one thing starts working more efficiently, then everything else starts kind of falling into place. So if you can see it like that, then it doesn't feel like you have to wait on that other person. It's so much. I'm just thinking about the struggles of when you do start to do things differently and things don't fall into place as easily as you thought they would. So I'll mention that real quick, just because I think that is important. If you're doing individual work, let's say, you know, you're not in couples therapy, or maybe you are, but you're the person that feels like, I'm the person that's always trying. I'm the person that's always putting the work in, and nothing, or it doesn't change. A lot of times what happens is we've been doing this cycle for however long y'all been together, right? And so at the point when you add something new, that other person is either going to freak out typically, and try to hold strong to the process that y'all been having because that's what's comfortable.
That's what they know.
Or it might be a reaction that you weren't expecting at all. And so that's why a lot of times the work that we do is not about like, I'm doing this to make this person do that.
Right.
It's about what are you doing that's best for you,
yes,
that can positively impact you and the relationship regardless of how that person might react to it.
That's why that individual work or that, you know, individual insight is so important. It's like, why do you want this change?
Right.
Like, why are you going to be working? If it's because you want them to change, or you're doing this because you want them to react a certain way, it's more about what type of partner do you want to be?
Right. Exactly. And so spending your time focusing on that as opposed to focusing on the other person. And that's why
a lot tougher.
I was gonna say, and that's why sometimes you know, couples get frustrated because they come in and they want to be able to say like they did this, and then
they're the problem,
right? And the first question is like, oh, how did you contribute to that, or how did that impact you, and what could you do differently? And it's like, what do you mean? I'm telling you what they did.
I'm innocent.
Why are you asking me? I can't do anything different. And it's a frustrating process, but I think it's because it's very confronting,
and it can be incredibly rewarding if you're committed to this process. If you are here to do the work for you and to heal your relationship, whatever that looks like, and you really invest in it, like you can have a completely different relationship and a new one, and have, again, more of these mutually satisfying moments, experiences. I mean, people in healthy relationships live longer, have better immune systems, you know, so it can also be incredibly rewarding.
Definitely. But I think it's just important to kind of recognize what it looks like, and that it's not we come 3 times and then everything's fixed and we're good.
And it's not even
a fix. I think that, you know, I kept saying that, and I feel like it's more of it's a process.
It's a process.
It's an ongoing process. And even if, you know, you do go for 2 months or however long you get these skills and you start to incorporate it and things start to get better, understand that relationships are not linear. It's not a straight line. It's going to be ups and downs. And so once you kind of get that, then you recognize, oh, okay, since we having a difficult time does not mean nothing has gotten better. It just means we're having a difficult time, and you go from there. So.
There you have it. This is what you can expect. Some of what you can expect when you are going to couples therapy. And even though it's not necessarily easy, it's not always pretty, but if you really commit to your process, just like anything else, you will walk away different and hopefully have a better understanding of how to have healthier relationships, whether that be the one that you're in or your future relationships. But it's like I always say, wherever you go, there you are.
Exactly.
So if you don't address it in this relationship, it'll show up again.
Definitely. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you follow us across social media at Melanin and Mental Health, Melanin Health on Twitter, and head over to melaninandmentalhealth.com to get some dope merchandise, to find a dope therapist, and to sign up for the directory if you are a dope therapist right now. It is free to be on the directory, so make sure that you go sign up for that. I think that's all we have right now.
That's all we have.
So we'll talk to y'all next time.
Bye.